I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network, and here today with me are Terry Lynch of Safe Canadian Mining and Eric Sprott of Sprott Mining. Thank you both so much for being here online with me today.
Great to be here.
Great, so let's jump right into our questions. We're here today for an update on the Safe Canadian Mining initiative, which was launched last year. Put very simply, the goal of Safe Canadian Mining is to have the tick test reinstated. Terry, I wonder if you could explain for those who may not know what this is yet, why is that important? What is the tick test?
So the tick test was a sort of a fundamental part of financing structure that was, part of all stock exchanges really from inception, and in Canada for 142 years, it was a cornerstone part of it. And basically what it meant was, if you wanted to short a stock, you had to do it when the stock was on the uptick, in other words, going up. And so the idea behind that is it basically, it prevented, I would say manipulation of stocks and forcing them down and creating fear for people. So that led to, solid capital formation and was a sort of an underpinning of, I would say, the structure of corporate finance. So they in 2012, they got rid of it. Not because it was a bad rule, but they basically got rid of it because they were bringing in algorithmic trading, and they couldn't figure out how to sort of deal with it. And they sort of said, "Oh, we don't need it." But as it turns out, given our research, we've proven that categorically this has cost investors and mining companies billions of dollars by removal of this rule.
Okay, that's a great quick explanation. So you've gotten a lot of people involved in this initiative. Eric, you're one of the people who's been involved from an early stage. And again, briefly, for those who might not know, can you explain how you got involved and what support you're offering to Safe Canadian Mining?
Sure. Well, I got involved because I am a very active trader on junior gold stocks and resource stocks. I see what happens in the market. I see these people knocking it down at the close by 5% in the last 30 seconds, who are obviously have short positions. And surely to goodness, the regulator knows there are huge short positions. And I wish the regulator knew there's huge naked short positions that aren't even declared. And all these people have very strange motives in terms of creating value in the investment business. They don't create value. They create value for themselves, but they take away value from everyone else. In fact, I would even go so far as to say the whole algorithmic trading. I mean, it sounds wonderful because they use the word algorithmic. It's really basically front running. And why would anybody allow anyone to front run us and pretend that there's more liquidity? Those people don't own the stock at the end of the day. Typically, they're just taking advantage of the market. So it very much upsets me to see what happens in the markets. I know that why they got rid of the tick test, so that the computers could do whatever they wanted to. If there was a tick test, they wouldn't be able to do whatever they wanted to. And we're talking about, I prefer they wouldn't be able to do whatever they wanted to on the sell side of the market, because it's easier to create fear by selling something down. It's a natural emotion. Oh, the stock's down 5%. There must be something wrong. But there is nothing wrong. It's just somebody setting up the table to con some poor unsuspecting investor in thinking that things have gone awry, and they haven't gone awry. So the regulator should really think hard about this. There's no need for these algorithmic traders and guys flipping for pennies. It's not creating any liquidity. It's stealing from the Canadian investor every day. That's the bottom line. And if that's what a regulator thinks they should stand for, they should just stand in there and keep it. But if what they're supposed to stand for is open and fair markets, it should go.
Okay, thank you. Now, I mentioned we're here for an update on Safe Canadian Mining. And one of the recent pieces of news is that you were commenting on a report released by Ontario's Capital Markets Modernization Taskforce. Terry, I wondered if you could explain for me, what did the report say? What were those comments that you're making?
So, the Ontario government, the Ford government, appointed a task force to look at updating the Ontario Securities Act, with a view to making it, modernizing it and making Ontario more competitive. So I think they've got a pretty great first effort. The task force has had a lot of good proposals in it, things that would be useful for making markets more fair, making them more accessible, being better protecting investor rights, enabling companies to raise capital more effectively. So they did a lot of good things. They specifically targeted predatory short selling, which is one of the things we've talked about. They haven't yet endorsed the reinstatement of the tick test. That's still on the table with them. I think they sort of, I believe that they got conflicting information from IROC on the need for the tick test to be reinstated, and we're dealing with IROC on that right now, and we'll have a position. Safe Canadian Mining will have a position of the IROC position before month end. Because basically IROC, as you know, is a self-regulatory body that is effectively managing our capital markets. So it's like the banks looking after the capital markets. So they have to be very careful, I would say, to make sure that they're not looking after their interests and not the participants' interests, the companies and the individual investors. So we're on that. We're watching it very closely, but they did get off to a good start, and there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Okay, and Eric, I have that question for you too. What do you think of that report? What does it mean for the initiative?
Well, of course, we want the definitive decision to reinitiate the uptick rule. It seems so obvious to me that it should be reinstated. I don't know what the difficulty is, and for anyone to pretend that algorithmic trading creates liquidity is the biggest farce of all time. Yeah, I guess it creates volume, but it creates volume that steps in front of other people. Well, what's the value of that? The legitimate investor is losing money in this process. So I think that it's an important initiative to support. I support it financially. Of course, I try to lend my name to it as well. And hopefully they'll see the light and do what's best for the people who live in this country, instead of some guy running a computer, perhaps even in a down south here, that's learns how to pick us off. So get with the program, please. Okay,
great. So before we move on to kind of the next steps and what's coming up next for Safe Canadian Mining, because we've talked a number of times, I went through the previous interviews and looked through the comments on our YouTube channel to see if people had any questions that maybe we could have you answer. And there are a couple that stood out for me. Terry, I have one for you, which I thought maybe this is, let's see what you think of this question. So somebody asked, why is this something that Canada's exchanges can't do, or can they do it? Maybe you could shed some light, because I know you do have support from the TSX Venture Exchange.
Yeah, so the exchanges, that would be the easiest way to implement this, is to have the exchange implement it. The problem is when they brought in algorithmic trading, they opened up multiple exchanges. So instead of having TSXV having a monopoly on trading, they allowed multiple exchanges. Now there's like 14 exchanges in Canada. And in theory, for example, I have a junior mining company, Chilean Metals. So in theory, trades in 14 exchanges. We're like a micro cap junior miner. We don't need to be on 14 different exchanges. We need to be on one with the tick test. So I think that one of the challenges is, how would you implement the tick test? Well, it'd be pretty simple. You would basically say, hey, let's get back to let companies decide what exchange they want to trade on, TSXV, CSE, NEO, whatever. Let them decide, and then they say, that's where I trade, and that would solve it. Then the exchanges to put a tick test in on their own exchange, relatively simple. To try and take feeds from 14 different exchanges and make it all sort of make sense, it's difficult, because people don't, most investors still think there's only one exchange. They only check the TSXV feeds and the papers, and they think that's it. Well, no, there's all sorts of, probably less than half of the trading, or somewhere around half, takes place on TSXV. The rest is on these other exchanges. So that's another problem, really, and we think that reinstating a tick test will actually lead to a solution in that.
Okay, that's really helpful. Eric, I have a question from our subscriber base that hopefully you can help us with too. I've seen a lot of commenters who are disillusioned a little bit with the plight of the retail investor in general, not just in terms of the tick test. I wondered what your take is right now in the situation that Canadian retail investors are in right now overall, and what might your advice be to people who have to operate in those parameters?
Well, first of all, I wholeheartedly agree with that comment that, of course, the retail investor and or the institutional investor, quite frankly, just being taken advantage of, okay? I mean, so much so that I know that when I'm buying things, I rarely would buy in an exchange because, you know, the minute you show your hand in terms of your order, somebody's jumping in front of you. And the exchanges know this, but they allow it. And it's the somebody. Who's the somebody that's doing this? And it's actually tends to be some hedge fund or the bank trading department or some darn thing that hardly needs to make more money, by the way. You need the bread and butter of investors to make money. You need the individual to make money, to have them come back to the exchange and not get ripped off when he puts an order in. So yeah, I completely agree. It's a tough market. When I put an order in on the floor of the exchange, I do feel like a sheep going to slaughter. And I'm sure the retail guy feels exactly the same way. So it's a problem for any bona fide buyer and seller. Any bona fide buyer and seller, you got to go to an exchange. Oh my goodness. Now you got to run the gauntlet. Let's see what happens.
Okay, and as we're finishing up, Terry, I'm going to push it back to you and ask, what is next for Save Canadian Mining?
So we're at a critical stage here. Over the next 6 weeks or so, the Taskforce will be making up their mind. So we're going to really start to crank things up on the sort of volume scale for Save Canadian Mining. We're going to start to host some seminars, get more news out to our audience, ask investors to come to savecanadianmining.com, register their support for the initiative. We're asking, mining companies to do the same, come to savecanadianmining.com, join the initiative, and then watch our we're going to, be doing some interviews with some of the mining companies that are participants in the task force, and talk to them in detail about their own personal experiences with the adversity brought on by the tick test, being gone. So the fact that they're facing predatory short selling, and it's unfortunate, especially now we're finally, this is a boom and bust business in mining. It's a commodity business, so we're about to head in maybe to the most glorious mining market of all time. And wouldn't it be great if the rules would work for us, and so individual investors could make some money, without having getting ripped off? So we really are at a point where we're going to be pushing that loud and clear, so we can keep the heat on for government to do the right thing. And they're off to a good start. We want to keep on encouraging them to go forward, make the change. Don't worry about the banks and IROC. We need to make this change for individual investors, for individual companies, and for our pension funds. That's what we need to do, and we're going to be pressing that case in the coming weeks.
Okay, well, that is great. Thank you both very much for the update. Really appreciate that. I think we can leave it there for now. But yeah, it was great to have you both on, as usual.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Charlotte. Thanks for the attention.
Once again, I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network, and this is Terry Lynch and Eric Sprott.